All right, welcome everybody. We are here for our first Durham Farm Connections live farm tour. My name's Nicole Swain and I'm a beef farmer here in Durham Region. So really glad to have people joining us today. Feel free to put some comments on, say hello, tell us why you're viewing, if you are a teacher or a parent or just an interested consumer. What motivated you to join us today? So again, just giving you a bit of an introduction. The purpose of the tours that we've got lined up for you, I believe they have around 20 different types of farms that will be profiled in the coming year. And the idea is just to give people a behind the scenes view of what happens on a farm and how your food's produced. So we'll get started on our tour here. I can see people joining in. Thank you very much for taking your time. I think we'll be about 10 to 15 minutes here, just touring you around. As you may be able to tell, it's quite windy here, so my really high-tech solution, I've tried to cover my microphone up with a bit of cotton so you don't get too much wind noise. But we'll just do our best to show you around and give you an idea what beef farming is all about. So I'm going to flip my camera around here and just give you a bit of a tour. Again, I see some people still joining in, so I'll just again say I'm Nicole Swain. I'm a member of our family farm here in Durham Region, and we are going to learn today about what happens on our beef farm. So I'll flip this around. There we go. And this is just in our back feedlot. So the cattle are just taking a look at what's going on. This is one of our outdoor yards, and we'll take a tour around. So we are on a beef farm. There are really two different types of beef farms. So you've got cow-calf farms where people have a herd of cows, and those cows will have a calf every year, and they will keep some of those calves to become cows in their herd, or perhaps to be bulls for breeding purposes, but any that they don't keep for that purpose will head into the food system, and that's where we come into play. So we're a feedlot. That means we do not have a herd of cows. We don't have calves born here. Instead, we buy calves from other farms, and we bring them here and we raise them up and we grow them, feed them till they're full grown, and then they head into the food system, make their way into the grocery store or the restaurants, and eventually to you that way. So as I'm walking along, you can just see the general setup. It's all outdoor housing in the back here. They have windbreak panels that protect them from the elements, so that's going to protect them from wind, from snow, to some extent from the rain as well. But really, we're relying on that straw. If you can see what they're standing on, that yellow substance is mostly wheat straw. There's some corn stalks in there as well. But that's going to be replenished for them generally about twice a week. We'll bed them, and that keeps them clean and dry and quite comfortable. One question that we often get as farmers is, are hay and straw the same thing? And they're not. So the straw actually comes, it's the stem of the grain plant. In our case, mostly it's wheat. So in the end of July or beginning of August, we'll combine our wheat, and then we will basically keep the grain. That's what we are looking to capture when we do that, but the stems of the plant are left, and that is straw that we'll then bale up and use for bedding for our cattle. So that's their general kind of housing setup. But if we look down here, this is what we consider our feed bunk, and we feed our cattle every morning, just once a day, and they then have enough feed. They'll come and they'll eat various times throughout the day and the evening, and then that feed will be all cleaned up by the time they get fed the next morning. So that's what the general setup is here. I'll just kind of zoom in and you can take a look at the feed. So this is called a mixed ration, and what's in here, you may be able to tell, there are parts of corn plants. So the majority of the material here is what's called corn silage. So corn silage is where we go with a harvester and we chop the whole plant up, and that includes the leaves, the stem, the corn cobs, and then that gets put into a big pile, and I'll just turn my camera around here, And so that big pile that you can see, it's got plastic on the top, and then there are actually tires weighing that down. That's where we bring the corn silage in. We pack it in with tractors, get as much air out of it as we possibly can, and then we seal it up with that plastic, and that essentially preserves it to keep it nice and fresh so that the quality of that feed maintains itself throughout the year. You can see behind it as well, there's a grain bin, that large silver bin, and that's where we would put the grain corn. So that's what we get when we combine our corn, the actual kernels, and we'll keep them in that grain bin, and it then augers through a grinder where we'll chop it up into smaller pieces so it's easier for the cattle to digest. And that grain corn is going to be part of our ration as well. The other components of our ration are distiller's grains, taking corn and sorry, I think my internet may have just kicked out for a sec. So then we get the grain that's left over from that process back, and we'll feed that because it's an important source of protein. We do have our feed sampled, so we work with a cattle nutritionist who will come and they'll take samples of our corn silage that we've made, and they'll basically do the same process that a nutritionist would do to figure out those nutrition labels on any of your grocery items, so that we know exactly what's in it, the amount of energy and so on, so that we can then balance out the rest of what those cattle need with minerals. So that's the fourth component of our ration that you can see down here. There are times of the year that we'll add potatoes in as well. There's another local farm that grows potatoes for French fry trucks, and any of the potatoes that aren't suitable for going for French fries, we pick up and bring and we'll feed the cattle. So at certain times of the year when you look at this feed bunk, there will actually be whole potatoes in it as well, which the cattle really enjoy. And that's an important part of how livestock kind of fit in the cycle of food production, is they'll be fed all kinds of food that isn't fit for human grade, as far as like leftover bakery goods in some areas. If you were to go to the East Coast where they grow a lot of potatoes, you might go somewhere and find the tater tots and French fries that haven't made the cut as well. So cattle are really good at recycling some of that food. So this is our second outdoor pen at the back. You can see that's a water bowl that's in the middle that the cattle from both sides of the yards can drink out of. And above that, we actually have a sprinkler system set up there, just that it'll provide a little mist for the cattle in the summer when it's hot, and they can stand under there, and it just helps to keep them cooled down. And there's also, I don't know if you can see very clearly, but that green drum, there's a heifer rubbing on it right now, and they'll use that to just rub and keep themselves comfortable. So those are our two back pens. I'll just kind of swing around here. This other yard here is actually, we considered our segregation or our quarantine yard. These cattle don't have any contact with other groups of cattle, so when we bring them in, we can quarantine them. As I think people are more and more aware now, the importance of quarantining for animal health. So that's a new project that we have here, so that we can try to really make sure we keep our cattle as healthy as possible when we bring new groups in. Because when we do, it's mostly within about a 6-week span. So we have a lot of new cattle coming in together, generally in the fall. And so keeping their health under control is a really important job. So this group of cattle here is just on another bedding pack, and they're just kind of relaxing and looking around. And I can look all the way back down. You can see they're just here having another little afternoon snack. We are just behind our barn. So as you can see, we were mostly outdoor facilities, but this is the original barn from this farm. It was built in 1895. And we still use it. I'll walk around front and you'll be able to see where there's cattle actually in the bottom level of it. So we do have that barn there, but these other groups of cattle you can see are still outside. The other thing I did want to mention is this farm that we're on has been in our family. My children are the 5th generation here. So my husband works full time on the farm here, and my father-in-law is still quite involved as well. And we do have a couple of young people. Oh, I just lost my content or my connection. Hopefully that's come back for you. But yeah, I'll just introduce you to one of our little people. This is Campbell. And Campbell was just going to tell us a little bit about what he likes about living on a beef farm.
Well, I like having a whole bunch of buddies to play with and hang out with. And I can get a lot of exercise by just having so much space, and sometimes I just like riding in the feed truck on the weekends to help my dad feed the cattle.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I think we got that all of our technology put back together here. We are just going to walk around. I thought I'd show you the front part of our yards as well. So I'm just walking along here where we have just an alleyway that the cattle will be coming up through, and take you through how, when we do have to treat cattle, what we do, or how we do that. I'm just going to come through this little gate. I've got my helper here. She's just closing the gate behind us. That's one of your main rules on a farm. Always close the gate that you open to go through. And so this is just the path when we do have to treat cattle. So I mentioned about how animal health is a really important part of what we do. So in order to treat animals, though, we have to be able to work with them and contain them, because they are an awful lot bigger than us and they're very strong. So just walking through the same path that the cattle would take, this is what we consider our tub. So we can fit the size that the animals are there now. We could probably fit about 10 of them in here. And then they would make their way through this alleyway up into what we call our handling facility, or our chute. And you may notice that it's all curved. And the reason for this is a really, really inspirational scientist like this, including many in slaughter plants, were all developed using her research. So that's why it looks the way it does. And then this is called a chute. That's where we would put the animal would walk into it, and their head would just come through here, and that little gate would hold them still. This one will weigh them as well, because we always need to make sure we have a weight when we're giving an animal medicine, so that we know that we're giving them the right amount of medicine, so that it's going to do the job it needs to do. So as we're standing here, I just thought I'd get Taylor to tell you a little bit about what she likes to do when she's helping around on our farm.
I like to help when we have to treat cattle. I like to help open and close the gates when they go out, and I like to keep in a notebook how much they weigh, what medicine we're giving them, and their temperature and their tag number, so that we have a little bit of a history on them.
All right, so as you can see, it's a family operation. We get help from lots of people around here. This is the front of our barn. So as you may be able to tell, there's a yard here. The cattle, some of them are up at the feeder there. Others are just in the barn, kind of relaxing. The cattle are in yards most of the time, but we do certainly have them out in the fields when we can. So we grow cover crops, which you may or may not be familiar with. But basically our philosophy, we grow crops that we harvest, but it's also really important to us to keep our soil healthy. So when that crop is harvested, we try to have another crop in the ground that is really just there to help the soil. And so cover crops around here are especially important after we harvest wheat. So we want to have that ground held with living plants and with roots in that soil to help the soil. And so we last fall, after we had our wheat off, we had a cover crop on about a third of our farm here with turnips and radishes and ryegrass and alfalfa, all kinds of different species. We want as much biodiversity as we can in a cover crop. And then we had cattle out grazing that throughout the winter. So they would go out and they'd feed in the yard, and then they would be out in the field as well. So they will be out in the field, but they certainly do spend most of their time here, where they've got access to all their feed, clean water, good quality feed and fresh air are the main things that we're looking for when we're raising our cattle. So that pretty much sums up our tour. I did want to just briefly mention a couple of things about the Farm Connections program. One really exciting feature that they've done, kind of in recognition of all these tours, is they're making a donation to the local food banks for each of the tours that happen. So thanks to you folks joining us today, and for the efforts that they've put into this beef farm tour, there will be a donation going to our local food bank. And then the other thing I just wanted to direct you to is, if you have any more questions, you can certainly follow Durham Farm Connections on Facebook or on Instagram, and hopefully find some more information that can help you understand different types of farms a little bit better. Anyways, I hope that's been helpful for you. It's been nice touring you around and talking a little bit about what we do. I hope that you've got a bit of an understanding of what a typical beef farm looks like and what we do here and why we do some of the things that we do. So thanks very much for joining us, and I hope you'll tune into some of the future tours as well. Take care.